The wilderness is a place of profound beauty, but also of uncompromising silence. Across the national parks and vast, untamed forests of North America, countless millions visit annually, seeking solace or adventure. Yet within these seemingly benign landscapes, shadows stretch longer than they should, and the line between the known and the utterly inexplicable frequently dissolves. This channel dedicates itself to investigating the statistical anomalies, the clusters of cases where trained search and rescue personnel, state-of-the-art technology, and experienced trackers fail spectacularly to account for the disappearance of individuals. People who simply vanish, often in broad daylight, leaving behind no struggle, no evidence of struggle, and sometimes the strangest of clues. We are not speaking of simple lost hikers, but of vanishing acts that defy physics and conventional criminology, often involving circumstances that point not to human error, but to forces outside our current understanding. The parameters are consistently unusual. Victims are typically experienced outdoorsmen, often found near granite outcroppings or high elevations, sometimes partially clothed or discovered miles from where they should have been, in areas previously searched. But few cases in the modern history of documented disappearances resonate with the chilling specifics of the 2003 vanishing of Liam O'Connell in the Chugach National Forest, Alaska. O'Connell, an experienced survivalist and former military cartographer, disappeared under conditions so baffling they forced the lead ranger involved, a 20-year veteran named Samuel Vance, to abandon his clinical, methodical approach to search and rescue. Vance's official yet cryptic incident report mentioning an observation above the tree line, in violation of known atmospheric activity, remains the only tangible anomaly in a case otherwise defined by its total, absolute lack of physical evidence. Alaska, with its immense glaciers, staggering peaks, and crushing isolation, provides the perfect backdrop for such an enigma. In 2003, the population density was sparse, and human intervention was minimal, allowing the raw, unpredictable environment to dominate. Our investigation focuses not just on O'Connell's preparedness, nor on the detailed grid search that failed to locate him, but on the unnerving documented events that occurred in the 48 hours preceding his disappearance. Events that hint at something non-terrestrial, something operating silently in the icy vastness. We delve into the official records, the meteorological reports for that crucial week in August, and the internal memos from the U.S. Forest Service that attempted and failed to categorize the incident. Was this a case of extreme, unusual hypothermia, leading to paradoxical undressing, miles from the campsite, or was the vanishing of Liam O'Connell tied directly to what Ranger Vance described as a silent, metallic presence, hovering silently over the immense Alaskan tundra? Stay with us as we attempt to piece together the fragments of a mystery where the evidence suggests the natural world was momentarily superseded by something else entirely. Liam O'Connell was the antithesis of the unprepared tourist. Born in Anchorage, he had spent 15 years in the military as a specialist in geographical positioning systems and high-resolution mapping. At 38, he maintained a rigorous routine of solo exploration, now focusing on high-resolution LiDAR surveys in remote areas after his retirement from active duty. His objective in August 2003 was not recreational, but primarily scientific. O'Connell was documenting a complex of active geological fault lines just west of the Nick River Valley, deep within the jurisdiction of the Chugach National Forest. At approximate coordinates 61.42 N, 149.37 W, his expedition commenced on August 14th under clear skies and a stable diurnal temperature range averaging 18 C, 64 F. Ideal conditions for hiking and surveying. O'Connell carried cutting-edge equipment, including a heavy-caliber hunting rifle necessary for bear protection, a tested and functional Iridium 9500 satellite radio, a MSR four-season tent, and ample food supplies for 10 days. The total pack weight was calculated at approximately 30 kilon, 66 lbs, which was perfectly manageable for his physical stature and training. O'Connell was meticulous, almost clinically methodical. He was required to report his position daily via the satellite radio to a designated civilian contact in Girdwood, a standard procedure he had never failed to adhere to. His logs indicate he established a robust base camp on a high plateau known locally as Devil's Bench, which offered clear, unobstructed visibility for miles in all directions. This high-altitude location, around 1,500 meters, 5,000 feet above sea level, was critical. He needed an unimpeded line of sight for his ground-penetrating radar and electromagnetic scanning equipment. O'Connell knew the myriad dangers of Chugach intimately. He understood the lethal speed with which the weather could shift, the pervasive threat of apex predators, and, critically, the crushing isolation. However, his extensive experience and preparation should have insulated him against the type of disappearance that ultimately occurred. He was not a novice prone to misorientation. He carried redundant compasses, a military-grade GPS system, and possessed a profound, intuitive knowledge of local topography. His stated plan was to spend 72 hours at Devil's Bench, completing the specific geological scans of the Rocky Massif. The distinguishing factor in his mission was that O'Connell was actively looking for anomalies. He suspected that the geological instability in the area might be related to sporadic, unconfirmed civilian reports of localized electromagnetic interference, something the conventional authorities dismissed as folklore, but which he, the skeptical cartographer, sought to either document or decisively refute. He was searching for the unexplained, but never anticipated becoming irrevocably part of it. The final confirmed contact with Liam O'Connell occurred at 1847 AKDT, Alaska Daylight Time, on August 16, 2003. He sent a brief, standardized message via the Iridium Sat radio to his contact. Position secure. Scans initiated. All systems nominal. Check-in tomorrow, 18:30. The weather report filed by O'Connell was clear, minimal wind. Ambient temperature 12 degrees C, 54 degf. Excellent visibility. Everything was, by all accounts, perfect. The next day, August 17th, the scheduled check-in passed without transmission. His civilian contact, following protocol, waited 12 hours before alerting the U.S. Forest Service. At 06 hours on August 18th, Ranger Samuel Vance was dispatched. Vance, deeply familiar with the region, knew that radio silence was concerning but not immediately indicative of disaster. Equipment failure or temporary poor satellite alignment were common factors. Vance hiked quickly to the last known grid coordinates. Vance arrived at Devil's Bench at 11:35 AKDT. What he found immediately shattered the routine nature of the operation. The campsite was intact, but eerily static. O'Connell's expensive four-season tent was zipped shut. The external food cache, meticulously hung on a bare pole, was untouched. Most critically, the sophisticated LiDAR surveying equipment, heavy, sensitive, and integral to O'Connell's purpose, was positioned precisely where it should have been, but it was off. The powerful rifle was leaning against a nearby granite boulder. O'Connell's SAT radio, the single most important lifeline, was inside the tent, resting on his sleeping bag, its battery fully charged. He hadn't been planning to leave the vicinity. His gear indicated he was merely resting or conducting quick short-range geological sweeps. The physical evidence showed an immediate, unexplained cessation of activity. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no disturbed ground around the perimeter indicating a conflict with a bear or human assailant. The ground was slightly damp from the morning dew, yet no fresh footprints led away from the camp, save for Vance's own approach. Liam O'Connell had simply ceased to be there, leaving his vital tools, his weapon, and his communication device behind. It wasn't just a disappearance, it was a sudden evacuation, a fact that to Ranger Vance felt profoundly wrong. Ranger Vance, following established protocol for a high-risk situation involving an experienced outdoorsman and potential injury, secured the scene. He photographed the meticulous state of the camp, a detail that later became crucial. He confirmed that O'Connell's heavy hiking boots were gone, suggesting he hadn't been pulled from his tent while sleeping, but had left intentionally, albeit quickly. The immediate search phase began that afternoon. Vance used his field radio to summon a specialized K9 unit from Anchorage. The team arrived by helicopter at 16 high, comprising 2 highly trained bloodhounds, Tundra and Kodiak, and their handler, Specialist Maria Reyes. Reyes had years of experience tracking lost individuals and fugitives in the high-altitude environment. The expectation was a simple track. O'Connell, perhaps disoriented or injured, had wandered off the plateau. Reyes prepared Tundra, introducing him to O'Connell's scent via a spare woolen glove found draped over the rifle. Tundra, usually reliable and aggressive in his pursuit, displayed immediate hesitation. The dog whined, pacing in tight circles around the tent entrance, refusing to move beyond a small, roughly defined 10-meter radius around the campsite. "He won't take the track, Sam," Reyes reported, her voice laced with confusion. "It's like the scent just stops here, dead cold." They switched to Kodiak, a larger, more aggressive hound, famous for tracking lost snowmobilers across miles of open terrain. Kodiak's reaction was more visceral. Upon being presented with the scent, the dog immediately bristled, let out a guttural, terrified whimper, and attempted to retreat toward the helicopter's landing zone, burying his head under Reyes's arm. Experienced handlers know this reaction. It is not confusion, it is profound fear of a non-conventional threat, a bear too close, a territorial wolf pack, or often something the dog cannot mentally process. The failure of the professional K9 team to establish a track, or even to acknowledge a scent trail, became the first documented anomaly. It suggested that O'Connell had not simply walked away from the site, nor had he been dragged by a terrestrial predator. His disappearance was not a gradual event that left an ordinary scent trail, but a swift, absolute removal from the environment. The search immediately transitioned from a simple recovery mission to a complex, inexplicable mystery. The full-scale search commenced on August 19th. Approximately 50 ground personnel, including specialized mountain rescue teams and local volunteers, deployed across a massive square-mile grid centered on Devil's Bench. Above them, 2 U.S. Forest Service helicopters conducted low-altitude passes, utilizing thermal imaging sensors designed to detect body heat, even through dense canopy or shallow earth. The search was exhaustive, methodical, and profoundly fruitless. Standard procedure mandates escalating the search radius exponentially over time. They started with the immediate vicinity, Zone A, and rapidly expanded to cover all potential terrain hazards, rocky ravines, access to the Nick River, and known predator dens. The thermal imaging scans revealed typical wildlife signatures, moose, bears, marmots, but absolutely no trace of human heat. The critical issue, as noted in Ranger Vance's official reports, was the geological context. Devil's Bench was exposed and relatively flat, making concealment difficult. O'Connell was not found in any of the obvious locations. Furthermore, the search teams reported a persistent, unnerving sensory experience, a silence that was unnatural. The forest, normally a cacophony of insects, birds, and wind, seemed dampened, almost vacuum-sealed, particularly in the deep ravines where O'Connell might have fallen. Specialist Reyes noted the phenomenon. It wasn't just quiet, it was wrong. The kind of silence you get right before a massive quake, but without the atmospheric pressure drop. My ears felt blocked. Even the men noticed it. No birds, nothing. This anecdotal evidence, while dismissed in the formal investigation summary, contributes to the overall profile of missing 411 cases, where witnesses often report sudden, localized environmental shifts preceding or following a vanishing event. By the evening of August 20th, 4 days after O'Connell's last contact, the official search reached a critical point. The sheer scale of the Chugach made further saturation impossible without massive federal aid. Lead Ranger Vance, frustrated by the lack of conventional clues, decided to revisit the primary area one final time before the search transitioned to limited surveillance. He felt compelled to check the highest peaks surrounding Devil's Bench, a location he had previously dismissed due to O'Connell's lack of climbing gear. He wanted to understand why the dogs had been so terrified. It was late afternoon on August 20th, 2003, approximately 1750 AKDT. Ranger Vance, accompanied by one assistant, ascended the highest nearby rock massif, approximately 2 kilometers northwest of the deserted camp. The sun was low, casting long purple shadows across the glacial valleys. Vance carried powerful binoculars, scanning the distant, pristine horizon line where the forest met the immense peaks. It was during this final, desperate scan that Vance saw it. He first reported the object as a high-altitude meteorological anomaly, a deliberately sterile term used in his initial field notes. In later transcribed testimony provided only to internal Forest Service review boards, Vance's description became far more detailed and disturbing. It wasn't a plane, and it wasn't a known military craft, Vance stated under oath. There was no sound. Absolute silence, which was impossible at that altitude and distance. It was too low to be a conventional satellite, but too high to be mistaken for a helicopter or commercial drone. The object was described as being approximately 300 meters, 1,000 feet, above the immediate tree line, a specific reference point that placed it well within the visible lower atmosphere. Vance estimated its size to be immense, the approximate length of 3 school buses parked end to end, with a smooth, dark, and utterly non-reflective metallic surface. Its shape was not a conventional disc or triangle, but something Vance later termed a distorted oblong, like a giant flattened riverstone. The most critical observation was its movement. Vance watched the object hover for approximately 45 seconds, stationary over a deep, previously searched ravine, Zone C. Then, with no discernible propulsion, no smoke, and no sound whatsoever, it accelerated. It didn't fly, it just went. It moved horizontally for maybe a second, covering easily 5 miles, and then shot vertically, disappearing into the pale blue sky in less than 3 seconds. The speed defied anything I'd ever seen or tracked, Vance testified. Vance immediately checked the area where the object had hovered, a difficult, treacherous scramble down the ravine side, only confirming the usual: nothing. The incident was documented, discreetly appended to the official missing person file as witnessed unusual aerial phenomena, potential misidentification of military activity. But Vance knew what he had seen: the sudden silence that Specialist Reyes had noted, the dog's abject terror, the complete, evidence-free vacuum where an experienced man should have been, all suddenly connected to this brief, terrifying visual anomaly. The implication was that O'Connell's disappearance might not have been a terrestrial accident at all. The official search operation was terminated on August 27, 2003, exactly 10 days after O'Connell failed to check in. The closure report cited probable misadventure combined with environmental factors, a standard classification that allows government agencies to cease resource allocation without implying negligence or resolving the case. Privately, Ranger Vance refused to sign the final section of the report, feeling the classification was dishonest given his own sighting and the unsettling K9 behavior. The financial and emotional toll on the O'Connell family was immense. Liam was never declared legally dead, remaining perpetually missing. His elderly parents, Margaret and John O'Connell, hired a private search contractor, a former military tracking specialist named Frank Delacroix. Delacroix spent 3 months systematically researching the Chugach region in the fall of 2003, focusing specifically on high granite areas and anomalies near the seismic fault lines O'Connell was studying. Delacroix's search yielded nothing until mid-November, just as the first heavy snows began to fall, forcing him to retreat. He found one single chilling piece of evidence approximately 5 kilometers, 3 miles south of Devil's Bench, in a dense, inaccessible thicket near the base of a glacial runoff. It was O'Connell's wool sweater. The anomaly was not the location, people can wonder, but the condition of the garment. The heavy, dark green wool sweater was not torn, stained, or damaged by animal activity. It was found carefully folded into a precise square, placed beneath a flat river stone. It was as if someone had tidied up an abandoned item. Delacroix noted the impossibility. It looked like a laundered piece of clothing, ready to be put in a drawer, not a lost garment in the middle of hostile wilderness. If O'Connell had experienced a psychotic break leading to paradoxical undressing, he would have discarded the garment haphazardly, often inside out or ripped. The neat folding suggested deliberate human action, but no human footprint was found near the sweater. Furthermore, forensic analysis confirmed that the sweater held a faint, residual odor, consistent with ozone and metallic dust, residues that defy explanation in a remote wilderness setting. This discovery, years before the full weight of the missing 411 theories gained traction, became the case's secondary, defining inexplicable detail, a perfectly folded item of clothing found miles from the point of disappearance, hinting at order amidst chaos. Years passed. The disappearance of Liam O'Connell faded from the local headlines, becoming one of hundreds of unsolved cold cases in the vast, unforgiving landscape of Alaska. Ranger Samuel Vance retired in 2012, but the image of the silent, dark object above the tree line haunted him. He maintained discreet contact with specialized researchers who tracked similar, highly anomalous cases of unexplained vanishings in national parks. In 2015, a significant, though peripheral, piece of information surfaced. A group of amateur geologists, utilizing O'Connell's original grid coordinates 6142° N, 149.37° W, for an unrelated soil study, reported an unusual anomaly in the magnetic field readings taken from Devil's Bench. The team reported a highly localized, persistent distortion in the geomagnetic field readings, a hot spot that manifested as a sudden, sharp and brief, lasting only milliseconds drop in the Earth's natural magnetic pull, occurring consistently at approximately 1830 AKDT, the precise time O'Connell was scheduled to check in. They documented this phenomenon occurring for 3 consecutive evenings before the distortion seemingly stabilized or dissipated. When cross-referenced with O'Connell's own surveying logs, a more unnerving pattern emerged. Liam O'Connell's preliminary handwritten notes found inside his untouched tent detailed EM interference and localized gravitational anomaly detection for the evening of August 16th and the morning of August 17th. He had recorded a sharp, unexplained spike in electromagnetic radiation around 18 pounds on the 16th, immediately after his last sat radio transmission. This evidence strongly suggests O'Connell was aware of an unusual event or presence during his last hours. He was seeking electromagnetic anomalies, and he found one, perhaps too close for safety. This corroboration suggests that the event that precipitated his disappearance was violent, rapid, and likely involved an energy source capable of generating both powerful electromagnetic fields and localized gravitational distortions, aligning perfectly with the advanced physics theorized to surround unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, or what were historically termed extraterrestrial craft. The neatly folded sweater and the terrified dogs now appeared less like random oddities and more like pieces of an orchestrated non-human event. The nature that took O'Connell was not biological, but technological. The vanishing of Liam O'Connell is not solvable through conventional means, because the documented facts push the narrative far outside the realm of natural accident or terrestrial crime. The case stands as a potent example of how the elements common in missing persons, the isolated location, the suddenness, the lack of a struggle, can, when combined with specific anomalies, suggest paranormal or, more precisely, non-human intervention. We are left with three dominant competing theories, none of which fully satisfies the data. Theory 1. Extreme environmental misadventure, conventional but flawed. This theory posits that O'Connell suffered an acute medical event, such as a cerebral hemorrhage or sudden severe hypothermia, causing him to walk away in a fugue state, paradoxical undressing. The failure of the dogs to track is attributed to rapid scent degradation due to the localized cold air currents on the plateau. Critique. This fails to account for Ranger Vance's UAP sighting, the specific electromagnetic anomalies documented years later, and the profoundly neat folding of the sweater. An ill person does not pause to meticulously fold clothing miles from camp. Theory 2. Targeted abduction by non-terrestrial intelligence, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Given O'Connell's active documentation of localized electromagnetic disturbances, this theory suggests he was intentionally studying an area that served as a hotspot or potential temporary base for an advanced, non-human presence. Vance's sighting of the silent metallic craft hovering precisely over a ravine before accelerating instantaneously provides the strongest physical support for this. The craft, using advanced propulsion or manipulation technology, could have created the localized magnetic distortion, the 1830 spike, and extracted O'Connell, likely utilizing a beam or localized field that left no physical traces or scent for the K9 units. The folded sweater remains the strangest artifact, perhaps an item deliberately discarded or staged, or even an accidental deposit from a highly advanced clinical retrieval operation. Theory 3. Temporal or interdimensional distortion, the portal theory. This highly speculative theory is often applied to cases lacking physical evidence. It suggests that the geological and electromagnetic instability in the Chugach region, the seismic fault line O'Connell was mapping, acted as a temporary conduit or portal. The intense energy documented in the magnetic readings might have signaled a brief spontaneous aperture into another dimensional plane. O'Connell, perhaps too close to the nexus point while conducting his scans, was simply removed from our dimensional reality. This explains the absolute lack of physical evidence and the sense of unnatural silence, as the natural laws of our world were momentarily superseded. Today, Devil's Bench remains accessible, but local Forest Service personnel report that the area carries a heavier, more oppressive atmosphere. The official signage still lists O'Connell as a missing person, a quiet, permanent monument to the statistical anomaly he represents. For the community around Girdwood, the Chugach National Forest shifted in 2003. It stopped being merely a place of harsh beauty and became a location where the rules of reality sometimes bend or break entirely. Ranger Vance, despite the mockery he faced internally, never retracted his statement about the silent object above the tree line. His legacy and the true gravity of the O'Connell case lies in the collision of clinical, methodical evidence, the intact camp, the terrified dogs, the EM spikes, with the sheer impossibility of the conclusion, the silent, accelerating craft. We are left staring into a vacuum. Was Liam O'Connell simply a victim of the most extreme coincidence of environmental factors and hallucination? Or did his meticulous scientific curiosity lead him directly into contact with phenomena the human race is not yet ready to acknowledge? a non-terrestrial presence utilizing Earth's naturally occurring weak spots. The Alaskan wilderness keeps its secrets ruthlessly. It offers immense majesty and occasionally a terrifying glimpse into the edge of our own comprehension. The case of Liam O'Connell, the hiker who vanished after a respected ranger reported something above the trees, reminds us that there are still boundaries in this world, immense and silent, that we are incapable of crossing, and the forces beyond those boundaries rarely provide satisfying answers. If you found this investigation compelling, please like and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the unexplained anomalies of the wild spaces.